I knew the call was coming. I knew it the way you know a storm is rolling in off Lake Ontario. You can feel it in the air before a single cloud shows up. My sister Vanessa had never once let me have a moment that was just mine. Not my university graduation dinner. Not the night I got my journeyman electrician ticket. Not the Sunday afternoon I introduced my girlfriend to the family for the first time. Every single one of those moments, Vanessa had found a way to pull the oxygen out of the room and redirect it straight to herself. So when my promotion dinner was finally booked, the night my company was making me a site supervisor after 11 years of grinding through rain and frozen job sites, I sat in my kitchen the week before and I thought, she's going to do something. I didn't know what. I just knew. I am 41 years old now. I live in Hamilton, Ontario, with my wife and our 2 kids. I work for a mid-size electrical contracting firm that does commercial builds across the Golden Horseshoe. I've spent most of my adult life being reliable, showing up, doing what I said I would do. That part of my personality came from somewhere, and that somewhere is the fact that I watched what happened when you weren't reliable, when you constantly demanded things from people and gave nothing back. I watched my sister live that way for 30 years. I decided early on I would be the opposite. My name is Keith. My sister is Vanessa Holloway, 38, and she has never held a job for longer than 14 months. My parents are Gerald, 67, a retired postal worker, and Maureen, 65, who worked part-time at a pharmacy for most of our childhoods. We grew up in Brantford, in a small brick house on a street where everyone knew each other's business. We were not wealthy. My parents worked hard and stretched everything as far as it would go. I respected that about them, or I did for a long time. Vanessa is 3 years younger than me. Growing up, she was what my aunt used to call a handful. She cried more, demanded more, collapsed harder when she didn't get what she wanted. My parents, especially my mother, responded to that by giving her more attention, more patience, more second chances. I was the older one, the steady one, the one who was told, without anyone ever quite saying it directly, that I needed to hold myself together because Vanessa needed the bandwidth. I internalized that. I got good grades, I got a trade, I got a job, I built something solid. And for years I told myself the imbalance didn't bother me that much. That was a lie I told myself because it was easier than the truth. The pattern started becoming obvious to me in my mid-20s. Every time something good happened in my life, Vanessa surfaced with a crisis. When I passed my second-year apprenticeship exam and my parents were coming to take me out to celebrate, Vanessa called them from her apartment in Kitchener, saying she thought she was having a panic attack and couldn't be alone. They canceled. When I got my first truck, a big deal when you're 24 and saved every dollar for 2 years. And my dad was supposed to come help me look it over at the dealership. Vanessa called him saying there was a leak in her apartment and she needed him to deal with the landlord because she didn't know what to say. He went to her instead. When my girlfriend Rebecca and I got engaged and we had my parents over for dinner to tell them, Vanessa called mid-meal saying she'd slipped on ice and thought she'd twisted her ankle badly and was scared to drive. My mother left before we got to dessert. Each of those things, taken individually, could be explained away. An anxious woman, an overprotective mother, an unlucky string of timing, but I was keeping score, even when I pretended I wasn't. Because here's what I noticed: Vanessa's emergencies never seemed to happen on a regular Tuesday when nothing was going on. They happened specifically, reliably, on the days that were mine. I mentioned this to my mother once, carefully, in the way you bring up something you know will not land well. I said, "Mom, have you noticed that Vanessa always seems to call when something important is happening with me?" My mother looked at me with that particular expression she reserved for when she thought I was being petty, and she said, "Keith, your sister struggles. You know that. You've always been the strong one." And that was the end of the conversation. I was the strong one, which meant I was the one who didn't need anything. The promotion dinner was set for a Friday evening in late October. My company, Bracewell Electrical, was taking me and a few colleagues out to a steakhouse in downtown Hamilton to mark the occasion officially. My new title came with a $12,000 salary increase and benefits that were meaningfully better than what I'd had. For Rebecca and me, it was a genuine turning point. We had a mortgage, 2 kids under 5, and every extra dollar mattered. This promotion meant we could finally build up a real emergency fund, maybe take the kids somewhere warm the following March. It felt like the moment I had been working toward for over a decade. I invited my parents. Gerald and Maureen said they would come, that they were proud of me, that they wouldn't miss it. Gerald even called me the Sunday before to confirm the reservation time. I remember feeling something cautious move through me when he called. Something that said, don't get your hopes up all the way. I pushed it down. I told myself that was unfair, that they were coming, that this was real. The call came at 4:15 on the Friday afternoon. I was in the parking lot of our job site, still in my work boots, changing my shirt in the truck before driving to pick up Rebecca's mother, who was babysitting so we could both attend the dinner. My phone lit up with my mother's name. Keith, she said, and her voice had that particular quality, tight, apologetic, moving fast. I'm so sorry, sweetheart, Vanessa called. She's having a really hard time. She says she can't be alone tonight. She's been crying all day. She thinks she might be heading into one of her episodes. I sat there in the driver's seat with my clean shirt half buttoned, and I felt something in my chest go very quiet. She needs us to come, my mother said. I'm so sorry, Keith. We'll celebrate with you another time. Your father and I are so proud of you. I said, okay, just that. Okay. I drove to pick up Rebecca's mother. I sat through the dinner with my colleagues, smiled when I was supposed to smile, shook hands, said thank you. Rebecca kept looking at me across the table, and I kept telling her with my eyes that I was fine. I wasn't fine, but I had been practicing not being fine in public for a long time, so I was good at it. That night, after the kids were asleep and Rebecca and I were sitting in the kitchen with cups of tea, I told her what I had decided. I said, I'm done. She asked me what I meant. I said, I'm not going to keep setting myself up for this. They chose her again. They always choose her. And I'm not angry. I'm just done pretending it doesn't hurt. Rebecca didn't argue with me. She had watched this happen for 6 years. She had watched me make excuses for my parents, rationalize their choices, minimize the pattern. She just reached across the table and put her hand on mine and said, whatever you need to do. I didn't call my parents that weekend. I didn't call the following week either. My mother left a voicemail on the Tuesday after the dinner, saying she hoped everything had gone well, that they were sorry they missed it, that Vanessa was doing better. The casual normality of that message, the complete absence of any understanding that something had shifted, made something in me go cold in a way that felt permanent. I sent a text. Short, I said, I need some space for a while. I'll reach out when I'm ready. My father called twice. My mother called 4 times over the following 2 weeks. I didn't answer, not because I was punishing them, or not only because of that, but because I genuinely did not know what I would say. Everything I had been sitting on for 15 years was right at the surface, and I didn't trust myself to be calm. I had spent my whole life being the calm one, the reasonable one, and I could feel that calcifying into something harder than I wanted it to be. 6 weeks after the dinner, I called my father. Just him, not my mother. Gerald answered on the second ring, and I could hear that he'd been waiting. I told him the truth. I told him I had been keeping track, not consciously, not maliciously, but I had kept track, and that the promotion dinner was the moment I finally let myself understand what I had been watching for 20 years. I told him that I loved him and I loved Mom, but that I needed them to understand what they had done, not just to me that Friday night, but across my whole adult life. I told him that every time Vanessa called with a crisis, they had gone, and every time they had gone, they had sent me a message about whose pain mattered in this family. My father was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Keith, son, I hear you. And his voice cracked a little when he said it. He said, I don't have a good answer for you right now. I just want you to know I hear you. That was more than I expected. But it wasn't enough to fix anything yet, and I think we both knew that. I told him I needed time. Not forever. I wasn't walking away from my parents forever, and I knew that. But I needed the distance to stop reflexively absorbing everything and start deciding what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted to rebuild. He said he understood. I don't know if he fully did, but he said it. What followed was 8 months of very limited contact. Birthday texts, a short call at Christmas that lasted 11 minutes. My mother tried a few times to restart conversations that felt like they were edging toward the old normal, casual, surface level, no acknowledgement of anything that had happened. I didn't engage with those. I kept things brief. It was uncomfortable, and it was necessary. Vanessa, during that period, did not reach out to me once. That told me everything I needed to know. Rebecca was my anchor through all of it. She didn't push me toward reconciliation, and she didn't push me toward a permanent cut. She just kept being level with me, kept pointing out when I was spiraling and when I was thinking clearly. She's a practical woman. Rebecca, she works as an occupational therapist, and she has a habit of asking the questions that get to the actual point of things. She asked me once, during those 8 months, what would you need to see from them to feel like the relationship was worth rebuilding? And I had to sit with that for a couple of days before I had an honest answer. What I needed was for them to name it. Not apologize in a vague, let's move on way, but actually name it. To say, we saw a pattern and we chose not to challenge it, and that hurt you, and we understand why. I got close to that eventually, but not before something happened that I hadn't anticipated. 14 months after the promotion dinner, I ran into a man named Douglas Abernethy, 62, retired firefighter, who had been my parents' next-door neighbor in Brantford for nearly 20 years. I saw him at a Home Depot in Burlington of all places. He was visiting his son who lived nearby. We talked for a few minutes in the lumber aisle, the way you do when you haven't seen someone in a while. And then he said something that stopped me cold. He said, "I always wondered what happened the night of your promotion dinner. Your mom called Vanessa that whole evening. I could hear Maureen on the phone through the fence, and Vanessa sounded fine. She was laughing. She had people over." I stared at him, said, "What?" Douglas looked a little uncomfortable, like he was wondering if he'd said too much, but he kept going. He said, "I didn't want to say anything at the time because it wasn't my business. But your sister had friends at her place that evening. I know because one of them parked partly in front of our driveway, and I had to call over and ask them to move it. I spoke to Vanessa directly. She was completely fine. She didn't seem distressed at all. I thanked Douglas. I got in my truck. I sat in the parking lot for a long time. Here's the thing. I already knew. On some level, the level that had been quietly keeping score for 20 years, I had always known. I knew the panic attacks that materialized on specific Fridays were not coincidences. I knew the crises that landed precisely when I had something to celebrate were not random bad luck. I had known it, the way you know something you're not quite ready to say out loud yet. What Douglas Abernethy told me in that Home Depot lumber aisle was not a revelation. It was a confirmation. But confirmation matters, because it meant I could stop wondering if I was being uncharitable. I could stop second-guessing the pattern. I could stop asking myself whether I was the one who was wrong to be hurt. I sat in that truck and I felt something settle. Not anger, or not just anger, something more like clarity. I called my father that evening and I told him what Douglas had told me. Gerald was quiet for even longer this time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Heavier, older, like something had been set down that had been carried for a long time. He said, "Keith, I owe you more than an apology." He told me something then that I hadn't known. He said that after I went quiet the previous year, after those 8 months of distance, he and Maureen had started paying closer attention to Vanessa. Not suspiciously, they would never have framed it that way to themselves, but they had started noticing things. Timing, patterns, the way her crises always had a specific shape. He said he had brought it up with my mother, and that it had been a very hard conversation, the kind of conversation a marriage absorbs slowly over a long time before anyone can actually say what they're seeing. He said my mother had cried for 2 days. He said they had finally sat Vanessa down, 3 months before I ran into Douglas, and told her what they were observing. He said Vanessa had not denied it, she had cried, which Gerald noted in a careful voice was different from her usual deflection, and she had said she knew she had a problem. She had said she didn't understand why she did it. She said she was going to start seeing a therapist. I asked him why no one had told me any of this. He said, "Because we weren't sure yet, and because we didn't know if you'd believe us, or if you'd want to hear it from us at all." That was honest enough that I didn't have a clean response to it. Vanessa called me 10 days later. I almost didn't answer, but I did. She didn't try to minimize anything. She didn't try to explain it in a way that shifted the frame to her struggles. She said, "And I want to get this right because I've thought about it many times since," she said. "I spent most of our lives making sure you couldn't have anything that was just yours. I don't fully understand why I did that. But I did it, and I'm sorry, Keith. I'm genuinely sorry. I didn't say it was okay. It wasn't okay. And I think she knew I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. But I told her I heard her. I told her I hoped the therapy helped. I told her that I wasn't going to close the door permanently, but that the door would stay where it was for a while, partly open, and that she was going to have to be patient with that." She said, "That's fair." It is now almost 3 years since that phone call. Vanessa has, by all accounts, kept going to therapy. She and I have spoken maybe a dozen times, short, careful conversations. There is no warmth yet, not the real kind. But there is civility, there is no more drama landing on my doorstep. My parents have been different with me. More intentional, I think is the word. My father calls on a regular schedule now, not just when something prompts him to. He asks about the kids by name, asks about specific things I've mentioned before, pays attention in a way that I think cost him something to learn. I appreciate that. I don't take it for granted, but I appreciate it. Rebecca and I took the kids to Costa Rica last February. The whole trip cost us more than I would have spent even 2 years ago. Flights out of Toronto, a week in a place near the coast, the kids losing their minds over monkeys in the trees, and I paid for it without panic because the financial cushion I built after the promotion finally felt real. We sat on a beach one evening after the kids had gone to sleep, and Rebecca said, "You seem different." I asked her what she meant. She thought about it and said, "Less braced. Like you've stopped waiting for something to go wrong." I had to think about whether that was true. I think it might be. I think for most of my adult life, I had been holding myself in a particular posture, half expecting to be disappointed, half managing my own expectations in advance so the blow would land softer. I did it so automatically I didn't even notice it anymore. It had become the background of how I moved through the world. I don't want that for my kids. That's probably the clearest thing I can tell you. My son is 7 and my daughter is 5, and I watch the way they exist in the world, fully, loudly, without hedging. And I think that's what children are supposed to feel. Safe enough to be all the way in. Safe enough to let the good things be fully good. I am not someone who believes everything happens for a reason. I think things happen and you make meaning out of them afterward, or you don't. But I do know that the promotion dinner, the thing that broke the pattern open, was also the thing that made me start building a different kind of life. A life where I stopped being the strong one in the sense of the one who absorbs everything silently, and started being strong in a different way, the kind of strong where you name what's happening, hold the line, and wait to see who shows up on the other side. My father showed up. My mother showed up. Eventually, Vanessa showed up, not all the way, not yet, but enough that I don't think the door should be closed. And I showed up for myself. For the first time in a long time, that part I'll keep.